One man who has purified himself thoroughly accomplishes more than a regiment of preachers. Out of purity and silence comes the word of power. Those of you who have this book, Inspired Talks, or those of you who have this complete works of Swamiji, which you might be going through right now when we are having this talk, you will see that even in complete works, this sentence, out of purity and silence comes the word of power. This is printed in italics. And very good of them, because it's a very powerful sentence. And when I was a young monk, I had this quotation written and pasted on in my room. Out of purity and silence comes the word of power. If you really want that your word should have power, practice purity, practice silence. Once I was reading a piece by Khalil Gibran, and Khalil Gibran is famous writer of many works. He was also a very good artist. Prophet is one of his very famous works, and it's inspired work. And Khalil Gibran, in that article, he says, I know many of my writer friends who have a very good time in some bar, some cafe. They talk, they shout, and then they go back to their desk and start writing. And then he says, I wonder how they can write. Unless a person has silence, how can that person write? Coming from Khalil Gibran. Orhan Pamuk, when he was writing My Name is Red, for which he got the Nobel Prize, for months and months and months, he was completely locked inside a room. And he had sent his wife and his daughter to America. And he was living like a mad person. And every week, once a week, his father used to come, knock, and take him out to a good restaurant so that he could have good meal at least once a week. At other times, he was not even paying attention. And he wrote, and he wrote. When you practice silence, you write masterpieces. But when there is purity, as we mentioned, purity at the crudest level is to get out of the desire of wealth, enjoyment, and fame. If purity is added to silence, then comes the power. All of you know the story of Jesus, when there was this fallen woman who was to be stoned as per the Jewish laws, and Islamic countries still practice that. And Jesus says, those of you who has not sinned will cast the first stone. Nobody did. Nobody could object to what Jesus said. Or Lord Buddha, when he told Angulimal, the famous robber killer, stop. Angulimal stopped. Most importantly, this is again my favorite incident from Swamiji's life. When Swamiji, after his all his touring in India, finally reached the World Parliament of Religions on 11 September and addressed the audience as sisters and brothers of America, we all know that history was created and the entire audience got up and clapped. Why? Now, this was something which had made me think deeply. What exactly might have happened that made the audience get up and say and clap? Swamiji himself later gives the answer. That behind those words was the complete purity, the power of brahmacharya. That is, Swamiji had never seen any female with the idea of sex. That level of purity, where Swamiji was not into fame, he was a sannyasi, he was not into wealth, and nor was he into any kind of enjoyment. And of course, there was silence. He was a person of meditation. And so when he spoke those 5 words, sisters and brothers of America, not only that the audience got up, even today India resonates with that. Every time you think of Swami Vivekananda, you think of sisters and brothers of America. This is the power of word that comes from purity and silence. Why nobody listens to us? Because neither we have silence nor we have purity. Why the country listened to Gandhiji? Because when he was into it, although he had not done it throughout his life, but the nearest that we can think of saintliness was in Gandhiji. He had purity, he had silence, had controlled his mind, and there was purity. There was no selfish motive, and the little that he had, it was about India. Why Netaji succeeded, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose? Because he may not have been as silent as, say, Gandhiji or Swamiji, but his motives were very pure. So every time you will see that someone has very powerful personality about him, and his words continue to resonate. You'll see that there is purity and there is silence. Unless there is silence and unless there is purity, be it Buddha, be it Jesus, be it anybody, the words will not carry weight unless these two forces are there. In our ancient scriptures, there is mention of brahmastra. In brahmastra, it was not only the arrows, it could be anything. Sri Ramachandra, he very famously once he took a blade of grass and made it powerful with the mantras and threw it. And it was a brahmastra. It would destroy the person at which it was directed. Important thing is not arrow nor blade of grass. The important thing is the power, the energy that is pushing it forward. Purity and silence is that massive force, massive energy that pushes the words forward.